Hello, everyone. It's been quite a while since I recorded one of these lessons. Been on vacation since then. So, this is Dr. B. I think you remember me, Dr. Madeline Boskowitz. I'm the author of I Want to Be Me, but I Don't Know Who I Am, a guidebook for teens and young adults, and also the I Want to Be Me workbook. Same girl, but with new friends. This just came out this year, and I've been teaching the I Want to Be Me course on Facebook in little 15 to 20 minutes increments. I'm going to try to, I'm looking at the clock for a minute to make sure I kind of have an idea of the time. And so I had last time I did this, I prepared several lessons for you to have while I was gone. Maybe you have listened, maybe you haven't. That is always up to you, of course. But I'm continuing. So, and I also in the last session was a review of chapters 1, 2, and the first part of chapter 3, which I call chapter 3A, which address the skills that you really need to have accomplished before adolescence in order to have a really optimal time during your teen years. That doesn't mean that it always happens. And many people enter their teen years not having completed the tasks that I was recommending for many of them. This was new, such as making sure that all homework is done on your own and that you're keeping up with classwork, that you address problems if there are any. You know, this is kind of daydreaming almost because so many of us do not have a chance to do that. But ideally, this is what you would do. And hopefully this book would help you realize that this is what needs to be done. So my advice was to begin to learn how to manage not your emotions. Remember, we don't control emotions, but to manage your behavior after the emotions or in response to the emotions. Of course, this is all mostly about negative behaviors, the difficult ones, anger and fear. And so this was quite challenging. And we talked about it at length. I also talked about taking responsibility for your education, for particularly the basic skills of math and English, reading and writing. And these are often a very big challenge for people. So I do realize that. So, but nevertheless, I want to enter the beginning of the middle part of chapter 3, which starts with the workbook for the early teen years. And these are the years from 13 to 15. So while I'm reviewing both the workbook and the guidebook, I am noticing that things are sometimes presented in a little bit of a different sequence between the two books, even though I followed the same outline. So I'm a little bit surprised, but I don't think it's a problem. I think we can accept that. And so sometimes the guidebook brings things up, but not in as much detail as I did in the workbook. So, but the beginning, the early teen years is now beginning the real work of the teen years. And it's the first time I start by part 1 is know what you want for your life, which is kind of hard to ask at 13 years of age, but it's a good time to start thinking about it. Seriously, you don't have to make a decision now, but just to kind of get in touch with your dreams, to acknowledge that even though they may be hidden, you do have dreams, and dreams are just that. Nobody is saying, they need to be the most logical thing. They're dreams. And then you will see as life goes along whether that can be accomplished or whether it changes. So a lot of times our dreams change. But in this chapter, I begin by, encouraging you to look at what it is you want for your life now, but with an idea of keeping an ultimate dream in mind as well. It's a little bit of a difficult entrance into the chapter, and I'm going to do my best to to present it. So let me share the screen here. Gotten much better at this. And show you what we're going to look at. So this is page 53 in the workbook. And so I call it Know What You Want for Your Life. Remember the dreams that we talked about in chapter 1? You know, what would you like your future to look like? At the same time, what is it that's most important for you right now? And I suggest with this list that you list them in terms of importance. Say 1 is the most important, down to a 5, which is much less important. And it's okay to have several with the same value. You know, you may have 3 things that are the most important to you, and you know, some that you don't even consider. So, you know, and again, this is a suggestion. It's not what this is what I recommend for this exercise, but you can also do whatever you want. Maybe just star only the ones that are important to you. Whatever works for you. So this is part of freedom. This is part of becoming autonomous, of managing yourself. So I just had some ideas: social success, being popular; school success, maybe good grades, you want to go to college; being good at sports, helping your family out; holding a job and having money. That's important for a lot of people. Being a leader in the community; involvement with church or community organizations. Maybe you're doing volunteer work, and or just, you know, busy with scouts and things like that. So this is very important. Getting into college, being in a gang, feeling you belong in a group. And I want to, as soon as I finish the list, I want to talk about some of that. Being a leader in your classroom, maybe nothing matters to you. Experimenting with drugs is what you really want to do, or quit school, running away from home, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, being sexually active, having a baby or child of your own. So these are quite varied. And I wrote here that not all these goals will lead you towards your dream, but then it depends what your dream is. And so some people have very short horizons. They want their dream right now. And this is why I said I would come back. Sometimes I've talked to teens that just wanted to be in a gang. This was very important to them, even though they knew that they may not live past it. It was very important. What I do want to encourage, and without judging the value of these things, but to have long-term goals, because hopefully you will have a future. And some of these goals do not really take the future in consideration. And that a lot of times is problematic. At the same time, they're often pretty common goals that teens in high school will have. So I don't want to be judgmental about it, but I do want to encourage you to think that if you want, you can have a long life. Though I've also known, as I shared, teens who really didn't think they were going to live past their teen years because life was just too tough in their neighborhood or too tough at home, and because they were already doing drugs. So these were teens that I was very sad for. And I'm going to stop sharing here just to talk with you a minute. So without judging those choices, I do want to encourage to listen to your little voice and to recognize what would be good for you. And then make that choice with that in mind. So that's the best encouragement I can give you. But I do realize, and this is the reason some of these choices are very different from others, that a lot of people feel they have obstacles in their life, big obstacles that keep them from moving forward. And they feel that they will keep them from moving forward. So this next section is quite extensive and talks about the obstacles in your life. And some of the obstacles are inside, in the sense that they're emotional, they relate to fear or to anger, which doesn't mean they're not real. They're definitely real, as I'm sure you know, you feel them, but they are inner obstacles. And then there are outer obstacles that we will talk about in just a little bit too. So, but let's talk about fear as the first one. And, how do you manage fear? How do you overcome the fear? How do you build up your courage to get things done? So, let's talk about courage. And that's one of the qualities I listed in the identity scale. And it's a quality that's very useful and that actually takes a lot of work to get for many of us. But first, so now remember the emotions, we need to acknowledge the emotions. So if it's fear, we need to acknowledge the fear. And that's the first thing, and to name it and to acknowledge it. And then we need to consider courage. Now, courage doesn't mean that the fear just goes away. It doesn't mean that we can fight the fear in that way, or that we are just very afraid, but we do it anyway. Right? That's a lot closer. So having courage is to face the fear and to, by facing it, it does minimize it some, but it also is still real. So I wanted to pick some examples of, I also recommend that you start with the easiest thing to overcome, easiest fear to overcome. And let's say for many, many people, boys and girls, teens, male teens and female teens, talking in class, and I don't mean acting out, I mean asking questions, volunteering answers is the most frightening thing because they feel very self-conscious, they're afraid to be wrong, they're afraid to be considered brown nosers. But school performance is important. So how do you go about overcoming your fear of asking questions in class or volunteering answers? For one thing, face it, and then what can I do to challenge it and conquer that fear? Well, only practice makes perfect, and you have to make the decision to ask a question. So the first thing that comes up that day that you don't understand, or if you have an answer that you want to volunteer, you raise your hand and you do it. So in that exercise, I ask, well, did you try that? Did you succeed? Did you ask an answer? Did you ask a question? Did you give up? How did it go? What will you do next time? And let's say you succeeded. So how did you feel after that? Maybe you can go back to the identity scale and move that courage button a little bit. You did have the courage, you overcame your fear. So a bigger one is also related to school, but a lot of kids that I worked with did not want to go to the after-school classes because you know why? Because they would be made fun of, because they would be called dummy, or they would be called brown noser, or traitor, that they want to do well at school, when a lot of times it's very fashionable to flunk out of school. So how do you manage that one? Let's say you do have a dream, and the dream a lot of times includes college. You want to do better than just be, college means more money generally. So you have a dream. You have to get that math under control. And again, will you do it? Did you do it? What was it like? Did you succeed? And how do you overcome other people's opinion and teasing you? That's an important one in general, to make our own decisions and to overcome the comments of others. They're really not as important as our own self-regard, our own way of looking at ourselves. So I'm thinking of another one for maybe when you're a little older is, even you go for a job interview. A job interview is pretty scary. A lot is at stake. You want the job, and then you're afraid to be judged. You're afraid to be rejected. Um, how do you go about it? How do you get the courage to go and do it? And do you prepare for the interview? Do you do your best to be rested? Do you get dressed in a way that you feel confident? Do you comb your hair? You make sure that you're looking okay. You want to present your best self, and for a lot of jobs, even a little job like working at the supermarket, it's good to prepare. It's good to maybe ask other people who work in supermarkets how it is, what what you need to expect. You have friends, your parents have friends, and you can ask people. So that fear in a way is the easiest one to cope with. Let's look at one that is not so easy to cope with. And I realize that I've taken my 15 minutes already. So I'm actually going to stop there for today. We did cover a little bit. The fear is one to really think about. And I want to encourage you to think about 2 or 3 examples for yourself of things that you're afraid to do. Maybe a lot of times it's making phone calls about something or whatever it is, and how you will go about acknowledging that you're afraid and conquering that fear. Not, that's what courage is. You conquer the fear. Doesn't mean the fear goes away. Though, after you've made a few phone calls or a few interviews or a few questions in class, you're, of course, much less afraid. This is what practice is about. So let me say goodbye for today, and I will continue actually and do the second half of this thing, but it will be posted later today. So let me close the recording for today.